This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth, and as you can tell by the title of this video, we have a very heavy and horrific topic to discuss, but incredibly important for people to understand that this in fact does go on. And of course I'm talking about the forced organ harvesting that is happening to this day in China, particularly among the Falun Gong spiritual movement. And joining me on the line right now is Mitchell Nicholas Gerber, a man who has been exposing this for a couple of decades nearly, trying to get the word out about what is happening there. And as I said, I mean, here in the West, I mean, it's generally considered a pretty good and noble thing, you know, to donate one's organs to the needy. It's a good cause, but here we generally think this happens after you die. Well, many of you people might not realize that there is, in fact, a black market for this type of thing. And in China, people are disappearing, and they seem to be targeting political and spiritual movements, in particular the Falun Gong. So, Mitchell, first of all, thank you so much for taking the time to break this incredibly important topic down for us today about what's happening there in China.
Oh, you're welcome, Dan. And hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in as well. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be with you. Yes, this is a new form of evil that the world really hasn't come to understand and fully grasp. And when the world and the world community and the mainstream media really truly touches on this topic and divulges deeply into it, the world's people will become shocked and soul-stirred that this has actually been going on for the last 18 plus years, continuing to this day under your noses, and where just hundreds and thousands of Falun Gong spiritual people, Tibetan Buddhists, Uyghur Muslims, house Christians have been forcefully sent in cattle cars under heavy guard to state-mandated hospitals, at least 800 state-mandated hospitals, death camps and labor camps. Their organs then just cut out of their bodies while alive without any anesthesia. The organ transplantation surgery is the murder itself. Cut out of their bodies while alive. The organs then taken, removed, and sold as the healthiest organs in the world for large and massive amounts of profits. And then the bodies then burned in the boiler rooms of the hospitals to conceal the evidence at the behest of the communist regime in China. And like I said, this is a new form of evil that hasn't been uncovered yet, but will soul-stir the world when it indeed is.
It's almost hard to even fathom that such an atrocity can be taking place, but in fact it is. And as we said, they seem to be targeting a particular movement there. So maybe we can start off with a little bit of context into who the target population is. What is the Falun Gong, and what is their relationship with the Chinese government?
Absolutely. Well, everybody, the Falun Gong, or also known as Falun Dafa, it's a spiritual mind and body practice, a very similar practice to Tai Chi, Chinese yoga, meditation. And it incorporates 5 exercises, 4 standing, beautiful, simple exercises to unblock the energy channels. The whole body feels, after practicing, relaxed, stress-free, anxiety-free. The blood circulates better, the organs feel healthier. That's the reason why the communist regime targeted Falun Gong, because once you start practicing the Falun Gong exercises, the body becomes incredibly healthy. We would see in China in that time, between 1992 and 1998, before the crackdown and the persecution of the Falun Gong began, hundreds and thousands, tens of millions, out of every 12 Chinese national citizens, Dan, practicing these slow-moving meditative exercises in the parks, at work, whether you were doing business in corporate America, whether you were a high-ranking political official, a CEO of a company, a professor, a blue-collar worker, a peasant in the fields of the rural areas in China. More than 50% of upper-class society in China were practicing these exercises of Falun Gong and following the philosophy, which is universal in all spiritual practices and religions actually to this day, which are the 3 principles: truthfulness, compassion, and tolerance. And when your mind and your body follow these more considerate, kind-hearted principles, whether you are in love, whether you are in business, in life in general, and then practice the Falun Gong exercises, something tremendously magical happens. your body transforms. So USA News and Today in 1998, I believe, wrote an article about how China, the healthcare costs were just been reducing based on millions of dollars per year. The suicide rates were going down. The productivity rates in the factories were going up. And people were living longer, feeling better. So this gives reason to why the persecution of Falun Gong became so severe. Number one, the ideology of Falun Gong, which is to be more truthful and considerate and kind to others and yourself, clashed with the evil, despotic, barbaristic, deceptive, murderous regime's ideology of the communist regime that has, since Mao Zedong, wiped out between 60 and 80 million unnatural deaths, decimated traditional culture of China, divine principles, and caused brutal persecution, suppression, and tyranny of the Chinese people for the last 50 years. And the second reason, which obviously makes sense to anyone who makes sense of this, is that the Falun Gong were targeted because the organs become incredibly healthy. I know as a Falun Gong practitioner myself, after practicing, my body has become incredibly healthy. I have had no illnesses. I've never had to see a doctor. I've become really healthy. My mind becomes more focused, and I can feel my energy, my breath, my organs become really healthy as I've been practicing for the last 16 plus years. So this gave reason for the communist regime to slander and attack this practice, and then send hundreds and thousands of Falun Gong practitioners forcefully to state-mandated hospitals and cut their organs out of their bodies while alive.
Unbelievable, especially while they're alive and trying to go for the freshest, healthiest organs possible. I mean, and what a way to be rewarded, so to speak, with that hard work of doing, you know, the work that it takes to get yourself to that level of being extremely healthy. It's just unbelievable that they would go to these lengths and do it while they were alive. I mean, can you tell us about that? I mean, it's almost a really difficult area to speak about, but this sounds like, you know, incredibly like a horror film.
Oh, shocking, a new form of evil that has been covered up because of the international community's bowing to communist China's economic pressures and political pressures. I am actually going to fly out to London and do a presentation to the ITNJ, which is the International Tribunal of Natural Justice, dealing with child trafficking and child abuse. And they have invited 1 hour presentation for me, as well as the former Secretary of State of the Canadian Affairs Parliament section, David Kilgour, and a Crown prosecutor, and Ethan Gutmann, a nominee of the Nobel Peace Prize of 2018, an investigative reporter and journalist out of America, as well as the Chinese surgeon Enver Tohti, who bared witness. He was forced by the communist regime to do a forced live organ harvesting on a Uyghur Muslim. He then fled China and now is in London doing talks to expose this even more so. So these three gentlemen, David Kilgour, Ethan Gutmann, and Enver Tohti, will be accompanying me on the 18th and 17th of April at the House of Parliament in London, exposing this new form of evil. And David Kilgour, along with David Mattis, who is a Winnipeg lawyer, 35 years international human rights lawyer, they exposed and confirmed the allegations of the forced organ harvesting of the Falun Gong in 2006 in their report called Bloody Harvest. It's a published book now called Bloody Harvest. But if you look up, everyone, the Kilgour and Mattis report, the PDF is online free of charge. And it is a stunning depiction of the allegations being confirmed that between 2001 and 2006, at least 40 to 60,000 live forced organ harvesting cases were confirmed by doing about 33 pieces of evidence, as well as calling the hospitals and disguising themselves as, with Chinese activists, disguising themselves as potential clients that would like organs. So they would call the hospitals and say and contact the actual doctors of the hospitals, do you actually have Falun Gong practitioners' organs? Because I heard that they're the best organs in the world. And you can actually hear them on taped. Yes, of course, we have many practitioners. When would you like to come? And this shocked them because on a specified date, it's like picking a lobster out of a tank, that you can just take a Falun Gong practitioner, cut them open, take the organs, burn them in the boiler rooms or the ovens, conceal all the evidence, like as if it never happened, and make millions of dollars out of this. In 2016, just to fast forward or fast track ahead, David Kilgore and David Mattis with Ethan Gutman, the author of The Slaughter, which is also great. You can get that on Amazon or on Kindle. The Slaughter that Ethan Gutman wrote, Bloody Harvest that David Kilgore and David Mattis wrote. They did a hearing in Capitol Hill on the Congress, in front of the Congress in the House of Representatives, about how hundreds and thousands of Falun Gong practitioners have now been sent to death camps and state-mandated hospitals and forcibly organ harvested and killed for their organs. So yeah, this is huge. I mean, when I started to learn about this, it shocked me. I never heard about this until 2006, and I was practicing Falun Gong in 2001. So this is shocking, Dan.
Well, I'm sure that it's presented over there as some sort of conspiracy theory that this is all imaginary, but you guys have in fact found evidence, and you have evidence. You guys have smoking gun type of evidence, right? I mean, how is it that we're able to prove to the rest of the people in the world that this, in fact, is a very real thing?
Well, read the Kilgore and Mattis report. Read The Slaughter by Ethan Gutman. Also, Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting, DAFOH.org, for those who are very statistical and scientific. The reports are all there as well. More and more evidence is coming out, Dan. And this is very hard to believe. There's a documentary actually that's won 14 awards created by 2 Emmy Award producers, and actually won the famous Peabody Award for journalism. Hard to believe documentary that can also be downloaded or rented at Amazon. Will also share about the inside of the Falun Gong and organ harvesting. It's a new form of evil, and the investigators also have shared with me that, Mitch, you've got to be very careful. You don't want to expound or exaggerate the facts, because as soon as people hear about this, they are dumbfounded. This can't happen, and this is not this. How can this happen in such a technological world, in such an advanced world? But it is going on, and we have confirmed the evidence is going on. And if people read David Kilgore and David Mattis's book, Bloody Harvest, if they look up David Mattis, David Kilgore, or forced organ harvesting, go to the website, which I can share with you at the end of the broadcast, you will truly know that this is going on. But unfortunately, the communist regime and its brutal tactics have done everything in its power, has expended at least 1/4 of China's gross domestic profit, ladies and gentlemen, to expose this, to fight against this exposure, to conceal the facts, to bribe officials, to bribe the Transplantation Society doctors and officials who have come to China lavished with goods, lavished with money, to keep quiet and to speak no evil, see no evil, and hear no evil. But it is happening, and those who choose to stand on the right side of destiny are heroes in this fight and are courageous in this fight. And let me tell you guys, let me tell you, Dan, let me tell you, ladies and gentlemen, this is one of the greatest and most hardest and most difficult battles of my life. And I've been in human rights for a long time. I'm 39 years old. I've been in human rights since I was 14 years old in South Africa. And this is one of the hardest battles I've ever fought. But the harder the battle, the sweeter the victory. Because with the evidence and the coming of light of all the witnesses, the evidence, it's undeniable and beyond a reasonable doubt that this is going on in China.
Now, as you've been on this trail, where have you found that it has led to? Is this coming directly from the government itself? Is this the Communist Chinese Party, the Communist Chinese government that is essentially at the top pulling the strings here?
Yes, well, the official title of the rogue regime that has controlled China since the last 50 plus years is called the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP, from Mao Zedong all the way now to President Xi. China used to be 5,000 years of dynasties, spiritual civilization, traditional culture, divine values. It was an incredible land. It had an incredible culture. It had an incredible lifestyle and traditions. But they were all destroyed and decimated when Mao Zedong came into China at the behest of the communist regime and wiped out 40 million people, also funded by the Rockefellers and the globalists, which we can get into in another conversation. But under Mao Zedong and the Chinese Communist Party, 60 to 80 million people have been wiped out. The Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, I was just in Cambodia looking at the killing fields. They were controlled by the communist regime. I mean, you have the North Korean peninsula now, all controlled by the communist regime in China. The biggest fear, if I may add in addition, on a side note, the biggest fear that the communist regime has is to be noticed. So as soon as they're in the limelight, they're like vampires. They quickly send their allies, or their dogs, like North Korea or ISIS, which are also being funded by the communist regime on the backbone, and the militant regimes and the tyrannical terrorist regimes in Africa, the Janjaweed regime in Sudan. I'm sure you've heard of the Darfur genocide. They're all funded by the communist regime for the petroleum oil, for the resources that the communist regime needs, because the communist China has the largest resources, it has the largest military, it has the largest economy. So they're all funding these rogue regimes to turn light on them and get them involved to turn away the light from communist China. But to come back to communist China, Dan, just quickly, the communist regime, there's a saying, most regimes or empires in history killed in order to conquer. The Chinese Communist Party, when it came into China, conquered in order to kill. It is a very evil regime. It's a sordid regime. It's a murderous history that just has completely decimated thousands of years of history and killed millions of innocent lives. And there's a really good documentary for those avid readers on China and really want to know about the behind the scenes, behind the Red Wall of China. It's called The 9 Commentaries on the Communist Party, and I'll also give you that link as well if you'd like to read about it. But don't be fooled. You know, people go to China and think you've got the skyscrapers, you've got the modern-day Mercedes-Benz and the cars, and people are doing business in China, and people are being open in China and welcomed in China for the business. But yet behind that, behind the Red Wall, we have to look closer of how tyrannical, brutal, and evil the Chinese Communist Party has been, and to this day is still being.
Well, it sounds like what we're up against here is something incredibly big, incredibly powerful, incredibly evil. So a lot of people are probably wondering right now, what can I do? You know, what can the average person do? What can someone here in the West who's just hearing about this through this YouTube video possibly do to try to counter this atrocity that's going on there?
The most important, ladies and gentlemen, is your awareness. If I can just reach through the screen and grab your hearts and say, look at this atrocity. Because every human being knows what is right and what is wrong. Okay? You're not stupid. Human beings are very profound beings. We're the source of all matter. We are incredible, intelligent beings. So use your minds, use your hearts, use your feelings of discernment, because discernment is the most important. And go to the websites which I will share with you. For example, stoporganharvesting.org, end transplant abuse in China. Look up forced organ harvesting in China. There has been a lot of propaganda against the Falun Gong, against the forced organ harvesting, as if it's never existed. But this is the kind of propaganda that has been repeated in the Holocaust, in Rwanda, in the Armenian genocide, when Pinochet in Spain was killing all those people. Even the Khmer Rouge in Cambodia, when people were being killed left, right, and center, 20,000 a day, the world kept silent because the propaganda was being delivered in a way that has never been seen before. For example, the communist regime has such a large propaganda machine through CCTV and its news agencies, as well as bribing the international community and saying, look, if you want to still do business with me, you're going to keep quiet. Your contracts will be cancelled as soon as you mention Falun Gong, as soon as you air Falun Gong. That's why you see the mainstream media do nothing about it, turn their backs. And that's why I take my hat off to you, Dan Dix, because let me tell you, a man like yourself is honorable, noble, and truly profound, because people like yourself who have had the courage to invite people like me on should deserve a Nobel Peace Prize. And not because of me, but because of the situation and the issues and the topic that is discussed today. So as for people Become aware about it. You can sign petitions. There are petitions there. I know people think, well, what are petitions going to do? The biggest change is going to come within China, obviously, with the Chinese people and with the collapse of the communist regime, because they are on their way out. Any evil regime cannot last, cannot sustain, okay, cannot sustain. Good will always triumph over evil. But for now, be aware, sign a petition, support the dignity of Falun Gong, rally your support to stop this persecution. If those who are out there who are reporters, who are listening to Dan, listening to me, those who have their own shows, who have board meetings, and who are teachers, who have classes, who are college professors, share this about the persecution. Share this wisdom. Invite me on. I will share with you. Even in your classes, I'll do a Skype conference on you. But the awareness is so important, and to fail to support the good and to fail to expose evil as a human being, especially when we have the human bodies, we have the organs, we have the same blood, we breathe the same air, is unacceptable. So I urge everybody, after watching this and after listening to this, go to the websites, read Kilgore and Mattis's report, read Ethan Gutman's The Slaughter, look at the reports at Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting, look at the reports at stoporganharvesting.org, look at the reports on the forced organ harvesting. There are many videos, there are many reports at the Epoch Times, an independent newspaper in New York City. Read the newspapers, look at the links that Dan will provide you, and become aware, because awareness is so important, and then decide what is right and what is true. If you want to believe the fake news and the garbage of the communist regime and the propaganda of the communist regime saying that Falun Gong is a cult, that this is not going on, or you want to sincerely believe what is true and what is right by looking at a man like me who leaves no name and seek no reward, trust Dan to report on the truth, as I've seen Dan's videos as well. That's why I contacted Dan, because he's an upright man. You guys are listening to this because he's sincere. He wouldn't report on nonsense, and judge for yourself. But to fail to support what is right and to stand on the right side of destiny is unacceptable. And it is the responsibility of every human being to make his own path and to decide for himself and herself.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, what we need here is awareness, first of all, is key, but then enough people to become aware of this to start wanting to do this thing where we reach that tipping point. You know, a lot of people call it that key number might be 10% of the population, for example. Once they understand that this is actually happening, that's when we're going to actually see the change come about. And it can potentially start here with enough hundreds of thousands, millions of people speaking out again about this. So I would strongly encourage anyone else in the field of alternative media, you know, get a hold of Mitchell, you know, have him on your show, have this video shared as much as you can, you know, to your Facebook profile or to your Twitter. Let's get the word out that this is actually happening so we can potentially reach that much needed tipping point. So where can people go? Let's give them the links. Let's tell them your specific website and any other links where they can go right now if they want to directly get involved.
Absolutely wonderful. You know, just before I share that, in 1998, when Falun Gong became the largest spiritual movement in the law of China between 1992 and 1998, through no media, no advertisements, no promotion, no social media, just through word of mouth, the founder, Mr. Li Hongzhi, he's actually also a nominee of the Nobel Peace Prize for the benefits that he has given to people through these exercises and his philosophy. After introducing it, it spread to become the largest practice in China. In 1998, the communist regime actually rewarded Falun Gong as the highest star Qigong or star practice in China, benefiting hundreds and thousands and millions of people. But Jiang Zemin, now everyone has heard about President Xi, has heard about Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping, but they have not heard about Jiang Zemin. Jiang Zemin was the former military dictator and president of China at that time. He grew very jealous and hateful that he couldn't control the hearts and minds of 10% of the population growing annually each and every year. So he outlawed Falun Gong and then started to kill them for their organs. He wanted to destroy Falun Gong within 3 months, bankrupt them, use them as raw materials, take away their children, take away their graduation certificates and businesses, and just destroy them and make money off their organs. This has been going on, ladies and gentlemen, for 18 plus years, continuing to this day. And also Miss World Canada, if I might mention, Anastasia Lin. You can look up Anastasia Lin or Miss World Canada, the beauty queen, who practices Falun Gong, wanted to participate in China for the Miss World, but was denied entry because she practices Falun Gong. And her father also practices in China. So as a Chinese Canadian, she took this opportunity to use her crown to expose this. And she went all over the world on TED Talks and other auditoriums and other platforms and press conferences to expose this. So I would urge people to look up Miss Anastasia Lin, Miss World Canada 2015. You can also look at our website, stoporganharvesting.org. There's also a website called DAFOH.org, Doctors Against Forced Organ Harvesting. Those who are avid readers can look at the publication called the 9 Commentaries on the Communist Party at www.9commentaries.com. It's a free publication. You can also look and watch, those who like visual aids, the 9 Commentaries on the Communist Party on YouTube. You can also go to endtransplantabuse.org, endtransplantabuse.org. Also, there's a non-profit American organization called Friends of Falun Gong that is supporting the dignity of Falun Gong and exposing the persecution of these people at www.fofg.org. And like I said, just look up these websites. Those will suffice. There are also YouTube videos, forced organ harvesting in China. Anyone, as Dan would say, who is looking at these videos, who have a college platform, who is a professor and has hundreds of students doing international politics, human rights, China affairs, invite me into your classrooms through Skype. We have the technology to do it. Why not? Also, anyone in the alternative media, anyone who's a reporter, anyone who's in a business, invite me as well. I would love to do interviews, but that's pretty much where you can get the source. And this is the truth, ladies and gentlemen. I wouldn't be telling you, and you wouldn't be consciously turning into Dan if you didn't think that this was truthful, because there's no BS here. This is true, this is sincere, and this is honest reporting. And that's why, Dan, I take my hat off to you, sir. You are a gentleman and a scholar for allowing me to come on here and share about the persecution and the truth about Falun Gong, which is a dignified practice, just like the Tibetans, just like the house Christians in China, who do not deserve to be persecuted like this and sent to death camps and mandated state hospitals and cut open while alive, and then conceal the evidence because the communist regime is making a fortune off it. So God bless you, and thank you for allowing me to come and share with you.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, thank you for doing the work you've been doing to raise the awareness about this. I mean, we're going to have all the links located in the description below. I strongly encourage everyone to check it out. Mitchell, any final thoughts on what you feel needs to happen moving forward in the coming years here? Because I'm sure, I don't know if they want a perpetual supply of these organs or if they want to just completely wipe out the Falun Gong altogether, like a total genocide. Is that the goal here, to wipe them out, or are they going to try to keep this thing going so that they can keep selling these on the black market?
Yes, well, the propaganda machine was so intense and has been so intense that they actually tried to turn public opinion against the Falun Gong. There was a self-immolation, a staged self-immolation in 2001, just giving an example of the brainwashing, the poisonous lies that the communist regime and propaganda that they used to spew the lies about Falun Gong in order to turn the public opinion in China against it, to commence this new form of evil of forced organ harvesting in China. In 2001, when the persecution was very severe, the communist regime forced 4 people and a little girl to set themselves on fire in Tiananmen Square, and pointed fingers and said, this is what the Falun Gong do. They kill themselves, they're a terrorist group, they burn themselves, they kill themselves. And this really poisoned the minds of the Chinese people. They also called them terrorists. And look, I've been practicing Falun Gong for 16 years. Do I look like a terrorist? Do I look like a cult leader? Come on, man. I'm an ordinary guy. I like, I enjoy life. I enjoy business. I practice Falun Gong because it's a very beautiful and peaceful spiritual movement. I have felt wonderful from practicing it. The dignity, the clarity, the cleanliness, the comfortableness, and the sincerity of it is unmatched. It's very similar to yoga and Tai Chi. And like I said, the Falun Gong were persecuted and targeted. And in 3 months, the president of China, who's literally on his deathbed right now, but has been coined the evil head of the communist regime, Jiang Zemin, was so hateful that he couldn't control the hearts and the minds of the people like this in China. And you know what? Beside him, the top Politburo members, the top government officials, and all their families were practicing Falun Gong at the time. The military generals were practicing Falun Gong at the time. Hundreds and thousands you would see in parks, in temples, in stadiums, and work, whether you were doing business or corporate, were practicing Falun Gong. People were getting all healthy, and suicide rates were going down, the productivity rates were coming up. And that's why the world and the international community wanted to know, what was this life force, what was this opiate, so to speak, of the Chinese masses that were bringing such a health and such a dignity and such a life force to them. And before we could get to them, before we could shed light on the international community about this, CNN and NBC and Fox News and BBC and all the mainstream, they were put into a room by the communist regime and said, listen, Falun Gong is evil, Falun Gong is a cult. And just to make matters worse, the communist regime under Jiang Zemin, the military dictator at the time, set up a 610 office. And this is really shocking. It's like the Nazis in Gestapo Germany setting up an SS or setting up a Gestapo-type agency. Well, the 610 office on June 10th, 1999, 1 month before the persecution of Falun Gong, the crackdown of Falun Gong began, and the slaughter of Falun Gong practitioners began, killing them for their organs and selling them as the healthiest organs in the world for massive amounts of profits, continuing to this day. The June 10, 610 office was created that still sits right on top of the government system. Well, there's the party system, the Communist Party system, and the government system. And the Communist Party system is like the Nazi system, or the fascist system in Mussolini's Italy, that controls all the government systems, the economic, the social, and political system from the top to the bottom. And the 610 office was created by Jiang Zemin and his gang of scoundrels, the Communist Party, to control everything, internationally, economically, social, politically, of China, for one purpose and one purpose only: to destroy Falun Gong, to eradicate them, and to kill them for their organs within 3 months. And now this has been going on for 18 years. Millions and millions and millions of dollars, multi-millions of dollars of misappropriated funds, using the secret police, the military police, the state-mandated hospitals to kill and destroy Falun Gong. Literally, the communist regime under Jiang Zemin launched an outright war against the spiritual movement. And the courage of these practitioners in China, the courage of the practitioners outside of China, and people like yourself, Dan, and I'm not surprised that the Chinese government is monitoring you right now, but that's okay, because you're showing them your courage, you're showing your tenacity, and you're showing your dignity as a human being to stand for what is right. And I applaud you, dear sir. I really applaud you. And like I said, in the next coming years, you're going to see, 2 to 5 years, what is going to go on in China, the collapse of the communist regime, the revealing and the revelation of this persecution and forced organ harvesting, and this is going to really shock the world.
Well, they want to destroy everything that is good. They don't want people to be healthy. They want us to be broken down mentally, physically, spiritually. And if there's a movement that is helping free people from that, certainly they're going to help do everything they can to shut it down. So we're engaged in a propaganda war here on this effort as well, ladies and gentlemen. People are being brainwashed to believe ill things about the Falun Gong here, but we have to counter this propaganda as best as we can moving forward, so that we can hopefully reach that very, very important tipping point that we need to get to. So once again, Mitchell, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to break it down here. We're going to have all the links in the description, and I strongly encourage you to keep up the work, because you know somebody has to do this, and I'm so glad you're there to do it.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm very grateful that I can be part of your report tonight, Dan, and I hope to have more updates for you in the future. Like I said, I will be going to London on April 18th to the House of Parliament with David Kilgour, the former Secretary of State, and Ethan Gutman, who have written reports and confirmed the allegations that this has been going on, as well as the Chinese surgeon, Enver Tohti, who is the Chinese surgeon who actually was forced by the communist regime to do a forced organ harvesting on a Uyghur Muslim in China. So there's no denying that this is going on. And I hope to see you in the future again, Dan. And it's been a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for listening.
Thank you so much. We will have a follow-up because, again, this is so important to understand, and you are the guy on top of it. So once again, thank you very much, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you. Take care. Godspeed.